morning and a very warm welcome. You are watching JanataTelevision and this is the English Bulletin with me, Chaitra. The top stories first. Supreme Court refuses interim order over constitutional appointments. Constitution bench issues so-called notice to the defendants. PM Deuba says mountains have become vulnerable to climate change, urges the international community to support Nepal's initiatives. President issues railway ordinance for the third time, preparation on the way for operation of railway services. UK to provide 6,000 missiles to Ukraine, Britain believes strengthening defense will turn the tide in the war. And ANFA allows NSL to be held on predetermined date, 10 teams to compete in this edition of NSL. And now the news in detail. The Constitutional Bench of the Supreme Court has issued a so-called order in the name of the defendants in a case filed against the appointments to the constitutional bodies through an ordinance. The Constitutional Bench of Acting Chief Justice Deepak Kumar Karki and Justices Meera Khadka, Hari Krishna Karki, Biswamar Prasad Shrestha and Ishwar Prasad Khatioda rejected peer for an interim order as demanded by the petitioner. The bench instead issued a so-called order. The Constitutional Bench refused to issue an interim order in a writ petition filed with a demand to scrap the appointment of 52 office bearers at constitutional commissions made by the Constitutional Council during the term of the then Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli. The hearing on the case starts from Friday. CPN UML chairperson KP Sharma Oli said that the party has shouldered the responsibility to take the country to the path of socialism amid existing problems and challenges. He said that the party is committed for the country's prosperity along with establishing peace and maintaining good governance by completing remaining work of the peace agreement and by safeguarding the achievements made so far from the democratic movements. The former Prime Minister made such remarks while addressing the third meeting of the party's Central Committee in Kathmandu. The two-day meeting will conclude today. Oli said that the party would fully engage in the upcoming local level election after this meeting. The meeting is expected to take a decision on mobilization of its human resources and organizations for the election and to monitor the activities of the other parties. The meeting will also discuss issues including the party's preparation for the election. Chairman Oli is scheduled to present his political report and General Secretary Shankar Pokhrel his organization report during the meeting. Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deuba has said that mountains across the world have become vulnerable to climate change. A report. Addressing the inaugural session of a two-day regional policy dialogue on sustainable mountain solutions organized in Chandragiri as part of the International Year of Sustainable Mountain Development, Prime Minister Deuba yesterday said that the mountains and the people living there continue to confront several difficulties. According to the Prime Minister, poverty, food insecurity, environmental degradation, risk of disasters and limited access to basic services are the major challenges that the mountainous region have been increasingly confronting. The mountains and the people there have become the victims of disproportionate impact of global warming despite negligible emissions of the mountainous countries like Nepal. Prime Minister Deuba reminded, adding that the world has not done enough to address environmental degradation. According to him, the inadequate efforts to check the impacts have triggered the crisis to the proportion beyond control. Prime Minister Deuba stressed on the need to take urgent measures to halt global temperature rise to secure the future of humanity. He added that Nepal has adopted an ambitious roadmap to achieve net zero carbon emission by 2045, urging the international community for meaningful support in Nepal's effort. The Prime Minister further said many scientific studies of the extreme weather patterns reveal that mountain regions are getting warmer much faster than the global average. Melting of snow, retreat of glacier, drought, erratic rainfall, flash floods already hint of a gloomy future. Prime Minister Deuba underscored the need for not leaving the mountain regions behind as the world is in the decade of action to deliver on sustainable development goals. He added that the commitment delivery gap will erode credibility of the international cooperation. He viewed that agenda for sustainable mountain development has always been a priority for Nepal. Moreover, the Prime Minister said in a quest of recovery from COVID-19, the mountainous countries require further cooperation and support from the international community. Preservation of indigenous cultures, generation of employment opportunity, and guarantee of development of sustainable infrastructures is equally imperative, he said. This is Janata Bulletin. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back after the break. We continue with other national news. The government yesterday confirmed 34 new cases of coronavirus across the country. The total cases of coronavirus in the country have climbed to 978,265, while the number of active cases has dropped to 2,453. Coronavirus claimed no more lives across the country. Nepal is currently among top 60 countries that have been most affected by the pandemic. The USA tops the list with over 81.52 million confirmed cases, followed by India with more than 43.01 million cases. Coronavirus has infected more than 475.81 million people across the world and claimed over 6.12 million lives. Kositapu Wildlife Reserve has taken initiative to clean 45 hectares of area at the center of the reserve to protect the wetland. The work of conserving the wetland area has been started with the objective of saving the endangered species or reptile, including fish and birds. A report. Authorities have initiated a drive to remove water hyacinth and other unwanted plants that threaten the existence of the wetland areas of Kositapu Wildlife Reserve. This initiative is also expected to support the livelihood of the locals, who will be mobilized for the removal of the weeds. As soon as the initiative was taken, the locals have started filling a chain. They say that a number of rare fishes and birds have been spotted again.
माछा र चाराको लागि हटाएको हो अहिले यो अलिअलि हटाइसकेपछि यही साइडमा 50 किलोमिटर चाहिँ मुनि हामीले सफा गरिसकेको ठाउँमा चराहरू अहिले झनै नयाँ चराहरू अहिले बस्न थालिसकेछ र नयाँ प्रजातिको पुरानो माछाहरू पनि अहिले तलबाट चाहिँ आएर वासस्थानको रूपमा बसिरहेछ.
The wetland area of Kositapu, which is considered as a protected area, is on the verge of extinct lately due to the unwanted plants. Water hyacinth extracted from the wetland area during the cleaning process will be used to prepare compost manure. Conservation work is being carried out in Kositapu under the Kositapu to Kanchenjunga Belt project with the objective of conserving birds and wildlife by ending the conflict between human and wildlife. Under this project, 45 hectares of land has been purchased to increase the wetland area. The process of purchasing additional land has also been expedited. The main purpose of the belt is to protect wetland area and aquatic life as well as plants that are dependent on the wetland. The Kositapu Learning Ground has been looking after the responsibility of wetland conservation and its promotion. Kositapu and Kanchenjunga Belt and Vertical Biodiversity Fund have invested huge amount of restore the wetland areas to its previous condition.
स्थानीयहरुको प्रयासले चाहिँ केटीके बेल्ट र भर्टिकल बायोडाइभर्सिटी फन्डको सहयोगमा कोसिटपु लर्निङ ग्राउन्डले चाहिँ यस क्षेत्रको सिमसारलाई चाहिँ पुनर्जीवन दिनको लागि अहिले हामीहरूले चाहिँ स्थानीय यहाँ चाहिँ सिमसारमा आश्रित जुन समुदायहरू हुनुहुन्छ उहाँहरूलाई हामीले चाहिँ रोजगारी दिएर सिमसार सरसफाइ कामहरू गरिरहेको छौँ।
This initiative will also provide employment opportunities to the locals. And now the news from economic front. Authorities have intensified preparations to operate the Janakpur-Jayanagar rail service with the reintroduction of the Railway Ordinance 2078. This is the third time that the President has issued the Railway Ordinance upon the recommendation of the government. Earlier, the Ordinance on Railway, introduced as per the Article 114(1) of the Constitution of Nepal, was nullified due to the failure to get parliamentary endorsement. Officials of Nepal Railway Company said that the door has been opened for the operation of railway service with the reintroduction of the ordinance on Tuesday. According to the railway officials, preparation is underway for Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deuba and his Indian counterpart Narendra Modi to jointly inaugurate the railway services. It has been informed that the ticket price for ordinary seat of the railway has been fixed at ₹70, while ₹300 will be charged for AC seat along the Janakpur-Kurtha-Jayanagar rail. Time for a short break here at Janata Bulletin. Stay tuned for international news. Welcome back. Now the international news. Britain will provide Ukraine with about 6,000 new defensive missiles and almost £30 million to support the BBC's coverage in the region and pay Ukrainian soldiers and pilots. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson will announce the new package of support on Thursday at the NATO and G7 leaders meeting, while also signaling an willingness to bolster Ukraine's defense capabilities. Further, his office said on Wednesday, top of firm button of firm. The United Kingdom will work with our allies to step up military and economic support to Ukraine, strengthening their defenses as they turn the tide in this fight, said Johnson. As part of the package, the UK will provide 6,000 missiles and £25 million in financial backing for the Ukrainian military. It will also provide £4.1 million for the BBC World Service to help support its Ukrainian and Russian language services and tackle disinformation. Britain said with the new commitment it will have provided up to 10,000 missiles and that the additional funds came on top of £400 million committed in humanitarian and economic aid. One of the Russian President Vladimir Putin's closest allies has warned the United States that the world could spiral towards a nuclear dystopia if Washington pressed on with what the Kremlin cast as a long-term plot to destroy Russia. Dmitry Medvedev, who was president of Russia from 2008 to 2012 and is now Deputy Secretary of Russia's Security Council, said the United States had conspired to destroy Russia as part of the primitive game since the 1991 fall of the Soviet Union. The views of Medvedev, once considered to be one of the least hawkish member of Putin's circle, give an insight into the thinking within the Kremlin as Moscow faces in the biggest confrontation with the West since the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. The United States has repeatedly said that it does not want the collapse of Russia and that its own interests are best served by a prosperous, stable and open Russia. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has killed thousands of people, displaced nearly 10 million and raised fears of a wider confrontation between Russia and the United States, the world's two biggest nuclear powers. Medvedev said the Kremlin would never allow the destruction of Russia, but warned Washington that if the did achieve what he criticized as its destructive aims, then the world could face a dystopian crisis that would end in a big nuclear explosion. You are watching Janata Bulletin, and now the latest from the world of sports. Nepal Super League will be held as per the schedule fixed by the organizers. A report. The All Nepal Football Association has given permission to Nepal Sports and Events Management (NSEM) to conduct the league on the predetermined date. ANFA said that it sent a letter to NSEM's CEO Sudeep Sharma on Wednesday in this regard. The ANFA's letter states that the organizers have been granted permission to hold the league from April 8 to May 15 as per their request. ANFA had formed a 7-member task force headed by its president Karman Chiring Sherpa to resolve the problems that had suffered due to the announcement of the franchise-based league. The task force has held separate meetings on Wednesday with the organizers of the NSL and 4 A Division Leagues club who were against the idea of holding such leagues at the time when the players had signed contract with the clubs. ANFA had earlier put on hold the Chaitra of NSL, stating that it needs to hold further discussion on the disputed issue. NSEM earlier continued with the players' auction on March 4 despite protest from the clubs. Neuro team, Manang Mersangdi Club, 3-Star Club and Sankata Club were against the NSL, stating that the players would have dual contract if the league was allowed to go ahead. Upendraman Singh, a member of task force, said that the agreement to hold the NSL will be automatically terminated after holding the event. The new leader of ANFA will take further discussion after holding discussions about the disputed issues, said Singh. He added that they will try to address the concerns raised by the clubs. There are 10 teams competing in this edition of NSL. We are at the end of Janata Bulletin and the headlines once again. Supreme Court refuses interim order over constitutional appointments. Constitutional bench issues so-called notice to the defendants. PM Deuba says mountains have become vulnerable to climate change, urges the international community to support Nepal's initiatives. President issues railway ordinance for the third time. Preparation on the way for operation of railway services. UK to provide 6,000 missiles to Ukraine. Britain believes strengthening defense will turn the tide in the war. And ANFA allows NSL to be held on predetermined date. 10 teams to compete in this edition of NSL. And that's all from the English News Desk for today. You can follow Janata Television and our programs on various social media platforms, including on our website janatasamachar.com. Keep watching Janata Television. Namaste.